Hello, 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 YouTube world. It's Miss Patti with For Your CNA, and we're here for another episode of our weekly live question and answer session on YouTube. I'm so happy you guys are here and joining us today. Let's see who we have here. Looks like we have a few of you. So when you come in, if you can just give me a quick hello in the chat, let me know that you're here. Drop your questions in there. We'll get to those very shortly. For those of you who are new to our channel and our weekly live session, we usually give a little bit of a lesson at the beginning of it to kind of go over some things that are important in CNA world while I wait for you to come in. And feel free to leave all of your questions in the chat while I'm talking, and I'll get to them very, very shortly. So I'm certainly excited to have you guys today. Hopefully you can hear me. If somebody can just give me a quick thumbs up or something in the chat to let me know that you can hear me, that would be awesome. Can you guys hear me? I hope you guys can. I know I had some audio issues last week. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And today, for those of you that don't know, we're working on a way to be able to grant you guys in-service credit, which you need to be able to renew your certification, particularly for Florida. That's where we're starting. We're hoping to add other states on as we go. But for those of you who are watching live or catching the replay after we go live. Oh, thank you guys. Hi, Fred. Thank you, Fernanda. For those of you who are catching it, you'll be able to go to a website, take a brief quiz off of the content that I talk about, and then we can grant you in-service credit for that. So it's a really, really easy way of getting your continuing education that you're going to need from renewal just by attending this, our weekly talks. So I'm starting to work on the content that I create with that in mind. So you're going to see what I talk about is a little bit more structured over, as we kind of move forward into this new format. And that's to meet the requirements to be able to grant continuing education. So our topic today is going to be on something that I actually saw quite a bit of this morning on certain Facebook groups. So I want to kind of get into that because I thought this was a really, really good thing to talk about in today's lesson, and it's something that comes up all the time. It's actually something that I heard in my classroom yesterday as well. So let's dive right into it. So our in-service topic today is going to be on acuity and staffing ratios. Now, these are big words, and it gets they get thrown around a lot, but a lot of people don't really understand what it means. So I want to take some time to go over this and define what these things are and how they're going to affect your working environment. So this is like a really, really complex topic that I'm going to try to simplify down, specific for CNAs in this, in this conversation that we're having. So as I go through this, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll discuss this in just a few minutes. So there was a comment on one of the Facebook groups today, and I felt really bad for this CNA, this individual. It said, having a rough day. I was fired for refusal of assignment. They wanted to leave me alone in the building with 30 dementia residents with 5 that have behavioral issues. One attacked a fellow worker that day. I'm going to miss my residents, but I know it was unsafe for me and my residents. Heartbroken. Now, my heart actually went out for this individual. This is such a difficult decision to make. I mean, the ramifications are huge on both sides. So I'm sure it's not a action that this individual took lightly. But I want to kind of discuss it from both sides of the issue, because unfortunately with the Facebook thing, we only get her side, or his, I'm not real sure, but we only get their side of the story. And while that's a very, very important side, I kind of want to address it from the other aspect as well. So we'll get into that in just a minute. But, at first glance, we look at this and we think, oh my gosh, one CNA alone with 30 dementia residents, that's way too many. Or some of you might be thinking, yeah, I do that on every single day. That's no big deal. So you've got some very strongly held opinions, depending on which way you land on this, but you're going to have a very strongly held opinion. And that's going to impact how you translate this post. So keep that in mind. You probably already have some opinions on this, but let's get into it. So a question when we're talking about acuity and staffing, the question becomes, how many patients is too many? And who's the one deciding that? Who gets to decide how many is too many? So now understand, this is a topic that we could spend literally hours and hours and hours going through. I only have you for 45 minutes, and we're not going to talk about this the entire 45 minutes. So I'm really condensing this topic down into just broad strokes. So keep that in mind. Please don't get mad at me if I say something that you don't necessarily agree with. That's part of changing the course, right? So if you have an opinion on this, I'd love to hear it. I have opinions on this that I'm going to be able to share with you, and hopefully we can have a sincere conversation about this so that we can make the best decisions possible based on the content of what we know. Okay, so keep that in mind, and don't yell too loudly at me. I don't make the rules. So the first thing that we have to understand is that as a CNA, we tend to see things through the filter of what we do. And that's normal. That's natural. That's in any industry. If you ask a food server, a waitress, they'll tell you they have it way harder than the cook in the kitchen. If you ask the cook in the kitchen, they'll tell you they have it way harder than the hostess. If you ask the hostess, they'll tell you that they do more work than the manager. I mean, everybody views their job, their tasks through the lens of what they experience. They can only see what other people experience from the outside. So remember, that's going to color how you interpret these tasks. But when you kind of take a step back and look at this a little bit more as an overview, it starts to take on a different shape. And that's really what I want to give you in this conversation. So CNAs, because they're certified nursing assistants, they get grouped in with nursing because they're nursing assistants. They're part of that team. And that tends to color how CNAs see their job. They are part of nursing, but they're not nurses. So we have to kind of keep that in mind, that even though they're part of the nursing team, there's different roles within that team, right? So when we're talking about nursing care, actual nursing care of patients, CNAs will tell you that they think that it's feeding, dressing, bathing, grooming, and all of those CNA tasks. And actually, it's not. Those tasks fall under a different umbrella. So when we're talking about nursing tasks, we're actually talking about patient monitoring and assessment. We talk about medications and treatments. We're talking about coordination of care. You know, nurses that have to coordinate with radiology or PT or dietary to make sure that the patient is getting the appropriate care. We're talking about preparation for tests, getting the patient ready for specific tests, making sure that they get there on time if they're in a facility. Monitoring of test results so that abnormals can be reported to the doctor immediately, those types of things. And promotion of safety while all of these other things are going on. That's all under the heading of nursing care. Now, CNAs do a lot of these things, don't we? We take vital signs, we help promote safety, we can get patients to certain tests and things like that. We can notify our nurse of observations, which goes into that monitoring and assessment part. So we do some of these things, and that's what makes us certified nursing assistants, because we're going to assist the nurse with some of these tasks, not all. Some of these tasks are outside of our scope of practice. They require that nursing licensure to perform, but CNAs help with nursing care, right? Now, while the patient is getting this nursing care done, they're getting the medications, they're getting the treatments, they're being monitored, they're being assessed frequently. They may have IVs or tube feedings, right? They're getting all of this stuff done to them. That's going to affect their ability to do self-care. If somebody is hooked up to a whole bunch of IVs and tubes and they're weak and they're unsteady, they may not be able to get to the bathroom themselves. They may not be able to shower or groom or toilet themselves. They may need some help with those things. Now that also falls under nursing, right? Because that's promotion of safety. But the nurses, while they're doing all these other things, monitoring and assessment, medications, treatments, the things that CNAs can't do because it requires licensure, while they're doing those nursing things, they may not have the time to take the patient to the bathroom or to feed a patient who requires assistance with eating, or to help make sure that a patient is turned every 2 hours, because they are performing those nursing core tasks that require licensure, right? So if they know the patient needs that care, but they can't really perform it themselves because there just isn't enough time, now they need help. They need assistance. Now, they could tag another nurse. They could say, hey, can you go do these things for me? And that other nurse could probably say, yeah, I can, but I've got my own monitoring and assessment and medications and treatments to take care of. I really don't have time to help you. So that puts the nurse in a real pickle, right? These patients need this kind of stuff done, but they can't really do it themselves because they've got other nursing things to do that require a license. So that's where nursing assistants come in. Nursing assistants perform routine tasks on stable patients according to the care plan. So the nurse decided this needs to be done, told the CNA to do it, or wrote it in the care plan, the CNA does it, right? That's the actual nursing model. That is how it's modeled. So the nurse does the assessment, develops the care plan gives the CNAs tasks to do, the CNAs do those tasks, report back to the nurse any observations they made, and then the nurse can reassess if necessary. So this is the care model. This is how nursing works. So CNAs are assigned to do routine tasks on stable patients. Now, it's important to understand that CNAs aren't supposed to decide things are going to be done. So remember that the nurse has to assess the patient, decide what needs to be done, and then assign those tasks. So as long as we're following that, that paradigm, everything is good. And when we talk about routine tasks, of course, the nurse can't delegate things that requires a license to do. They can't delegate that tube feeding, or they can't delegate that assessment, or they can't delegate that coordination of care, or they can't delegate that wound care, right? It has to be something that doesn't require a license, a routine task on a stable patient. And that's where we get into this sub-layer called personal care. And this is what we're most familiar with as CNAs. These are things like bathing, dressing, grooming, toileting, meals, mobility, socialization, and even rest and sleep falls under that category of personal care. Now, anything in here, it is okay for nurses to delegate off to CNAs. So this is what we are most familiar with. These are our tasks. This is what we generally get assigned to do. Now, it's not that the nurse can't do it. It's that the nurse is busy doing tasks that require licensure that we can't do, and they need their time freed up to do those tasks, and that's why these tasks get delegated. So you guys kind of understand how that part of it works. But what I want you to understand here is that this whole thing takes a team effort. There's nurses and there's CNAs, but all together it makes up the nursing team. Now, this is really, really important when we're talking about staffing ratios, because when they're deciding staffing ratios, they're looking at the team. They're not looking at RNs and CNAs specifically. They're looking at the team, because they know that RNs can do these tasks, but they're less likely to do them because they need their time freed up for those tasks that require licensure. So we need RNs and LPNs to do those licensed tasks, and we need CNAs to help perform the routine tasks that free up those nurses to do the other things, right? So it takes a team. Now, this is important to understand when we're talking about staffing, because remember, staffing is always based on the team. And this is where CNAs run into trouble, okay? So there are some federal guidelines that exist, and they're designed to help make sure that the well-being of the patient is adequate, okay? And we have to understand that everybody's going to define that a little bit differently, right? But to provide adequate care, and the federal guidelines are very, very, very vague. They really, for the most part, leave it up to the states to decide what the state considers accurate. Now, there's a huge movement on right now to have the federal government define these levels. And I'm going to tell you guys, I don't think that's a good idea. And I'll explain why in a minute. And it sounds good on the surface, right? It sounds like a great idea. Well, if the federal government got involved and they told the facilities that they had to have, at least so many staff, per patient, that's a good thing. Well, not necessarily, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. Remember, anytime the federal government gets involved, things get really out of hand really quickly. But for the most part right now, it's mostly left up to the states to figure this out. Now, some states have developed actual guidelines. They say, okay, we want this many nursing staff for this many residents, throughout the 24-hour period. Other states go a step further and they say, okay, we need this many staff for this many residents every shift. So every state's going to handle this a little bit differently. Now, there's several states that are like, nah, we're going to let the facilities figure it out. That's not a good idea either. So there has to be some oversight, but because let's face it, there's a certain segment of the population that isn't going to do the right thing unless they're forced to do the right thing. So there does need to be some guidance here. There needs to be some consequence if the facility is not working in the best interest of the patient. But for the most part, I'm in favor of some standards, but I'm not really in favor of federal standards. Because that has everything to do with acuity, and I'm going to get there in just a second. But when you're talking about staffing ratios, CNAs tend to look at this as, well, a staffing ratio would make sure that there are, there's one CNA for every 10 patients, or one CNA for every 6 patients, or one CNA for every 30 patients. And actually, that is not what staffing ratios do. And this comes up a lot in, in healthcare, right? And I hear it all the time. Well, what is the staffing ratio? How many CNAs per, or how many patients per CNA in this setting? And that is an impossible question to answer. It really is. And it's not a state requirement. It's not a federal requirement. There's nothing anywhere that says one CNA can handle 6 residents. It doesn't work like that. And I'm going to explain to you why. This whole staffing ratio thing has to do with something called HPRDS. Now, when I first heard this, I'm like, what in the world is that? I've never heard of that. But this actually means hours per resident per day. Okay, got it. Hours per resident per day. Man, that sounds like a good thing, right? If I know that I've got 10 residents and they each require 2 hours per resident per day of direct care, then I know 10 residents, they each need 2 hours per day. I need 2 CNAs to take care of 20 residents, right? It's very easy math, very simple math. But that's not how this math works. This math is anything but simple. Because it's not just going to include the CNAs. It's also going to include the healthcare team, the nursing team. And that includes the DON, who's an RN, the assistant DON, the charge nurse, the nurses, and the CNAs. So that DON who's sitting in their office is actually counting toward this staffing ratio. Now, they're not in there helping you feed the patients, clearly, but it's going to count toward this staffing ratio because at the end of the day, we need a leader in the facility. We need somebody that can take on those administrative decisions. So we need that RN. We need that DON role. But the fact that they count toward this HPRDS is a head scratcher, right? Because they're not performing patient care. Now, some states acknowledge this, and some states have a different formula for figuring this out, but this is kind of a generic, what I'm talking about is more of a generic used by most states. So when we understand that the staffing ratio is going to include all staff, it gets a little complex. Now, how they work this out is they divide the number of nursing staff hours by the number of residents in the building. So let's just do easy. Well, let's make this easy, right? Let's say we have 100 residents in our building, and we know that we have 2 hours per resident required. Okay? So that means we have 200 hours of staff that's required each day. Well, you working an 8-hour day is going to count toward that. The nurse working an 8-hour day is going to count toward that. Another CNA on another hall working an 8-hour day is going to count toward that. And the assistant DON is going to count toward that. And the DON is going to count toward that too. So even though we have 200 people in the building and they each require 2 hours of care, when you look at this staffing ratio using this this formula that they have, it's pretty quick to understand that that 2 hours of care is not 2 actual hours of hands-on care at the bedside by a dedicated care worker. That has nothing to do with this. Nothing. So it's not a direct measurement of the actual care provided. And that's where I'm saying that once you get the federal government involved in here, it's going to get really, really complex because the federal government is not looking at how much care Mabel needs, how much care Henry needs, how much care Martha needs. That does not factor into this at all. It's simply complex math that tells you or tells the facility how many people should be scheduled. Now, that doesn't take into account how good those staff members are. It also doesn't take into account how many people call off, right? So there's a lot of things going on here. So a little more complex than it looks on the surface. Now, this is where we're really going to get it. We're going to go off in a no man's land here because so far, we just talked about number of staff people and number of residents. We haven't talked about what kind of residents we have, right? Acuity is going to measure the actual amount of care required. So when we have staffing ratios, that just tells us people. It's strictly people. It's a numbers game. Acuity takes it a step further and says, okay, well, how much care is going to be required because every person is different. And this is going to be impacted by so many variables. But this is actually what we kind of think of when we're talking about staffing ratios. We want that hard number. 1 CNA for 6 patients. I want that hard number. It's easy to work with, right? It makes sure that the patients get the care they need, that type of thing. So when we're talking about staffing ratios as CNAs, what we actually are talking about is more acuity-based care. And that didn't enter into our formula at all. And that's because acuity is going to vary by facility. It's going to vary by the type or the units in the facility, and it's going to vary by each patient as well. So let me give you some examples of this and why this would be, why it varies so widely. Let's say that you're in a horrible car accident and you break your leg in like 4 places and you get taken to the hospital. Now, when you're in the hospital, you are in acute care. It's an immediate need. It's a brand new broken leg. We have to do surgery and patch you back up and put you back together. And we're concerned about your blood pressure. We're concerned about your pain levels. We're concerned about compartment syndrome. We're concerned about infection. We're concerned about your ability to resume your daily activities. So there's a lot of things going on right then and there that are all encompassing. So you are on let's say that you're in a intermediate care unit, right? You're getting quite a bit of care. Now, right down the hallway is the mother-baby unit, and they don't require as much care. Once they give birth, in that, 14, 18 hours before they go home, and they got this cute little cuddly, precious ball of something, right? They are going to go home. They're pretty self-sufficient. They just need you to bring them some ginger ale once in a while and maybe help them to the bathroom to do a sitz bath, right? They don't require as much care as somebody who just broke their leg in 4 places. That person's going to require a little bit more care. And right down the hall in the other direction is a brand new post-op patient who just had open heart surgery and has an arterial line. They have a central line with medications. Their blood pressure is dropping, so they've got multiple drips. They have, they also have an infection risk. They also have, a pneumonia risk. They have some of the things that you've got, but not as many. So the mother-baby unit doesn't require as much care. You require a little bit more. The patient just out of surgery requires a whole lot more, right? Even within that one floor of the facility, we have patients that require different levels of care. That's called acuity. So we can have 1 CNA in the mother-baby unit and take care of everybody there, no worries at all. You can have maybe 1 CNA on the ortho floor, but they can only take care of maybe 10 patients because those patients are going to need that's an ortho floor. They need more help getting around. And then you may have 1 CNA for 2 patients in the ICU, right? So post-surgical ICU. So there's a big difference in the amount of care required in each area, right? But it even gets worse than that because within that department, you can have different levels of care. So you just broke your leg in 4 places, just had surgery. You require a lot of care because you can't get out of bed yet. But the patient right next to you in the same room, your roommate, just had a knee replacement. So same room, just had a knee replacement and is getting ready to be discharged out to a rehab center for therapy. They can pretty much do everything on their own other than, they're bathing themselves, they're dressing themselves, they're getting themselves ready. They're doing everything on their own. They just need a little bit of help with mobility, right? So within each facility, you're going to have different patients. Within each unit, you're going to have different patients. And then when you start talking about the different types of facilities out there, it can really get complex. So it's impossible to say with any level of certainty, one CNA can handle 6 patients. Well, what are those patients like? Are those patients fully functioning, autonomous individuals that maybe have a heart murmur? Oh yeah, I can handle 6 of those, no problem. Or are those 6 full care dementia patients that are bedbound and have to be turned every 2 hours and continent care every 2 hours, fed? 6 patients in that unit might be way overwhelming because they're total care. So you can't put hard numbers on this because it really does vary by facility type. Hospitals are going to need different staffing ratios than rehab centers. Rehab centers are going to need different staffing ratios than residential centers like nursing homes or assisted living. Every type of setting is going to have a different type of patient that's going to require a different type of care. And then within that setting, you've got patients that require a little more care, a little less care. So this is like unbelievably complex. Now, the federal government's going to come in and say, okay, we're just going to make it, we're going to try to simplify this and just give you a number and you can work with that. Well, that's not necessarily the best option either because, hey, if I'm working on that mother baby unit and all I've got is 4 new moms to take care of and I can sit in the break room and play on my phone, hey, I'll take a 1-to-6 staffing ratio any day of the week. But if I'm in a setting where my patients are completely unstable and I've got to do everything with them, 1-to-6, way too many. So acuity has to play into this. Does that make sense? That term acuity has to play into the decision. And the real problem here is that acuity changes all the time. There's nothing stable about this. Your patients may get a little bit better, especially that one that just had the total knee replacement and is going to rehab. His goal is to go home, right? Go home. So he's going to get better. And then you've got patients that get worse and they require more care than they did. You've got patients that get discharged and then you've got patients that get admitted. You've got patients that have emergencies, right? So your patients are changing all the time. So you might start a shift at 7 a.m. and have 12 patients, and by the time you go home at 3 p.m., you may have 14 patients. So things change all the time, and it depends on the setting you're in as to how often they'll change. But in a hospital, admissions and discharges are daily. In a rehab setting, admissions and discharges are a little less common. They may not be daily, but you definitely have a couple of them a week. In a long-term care facility, like a nursing home, admissions and discharges may only happen once a month or so. So every facility is going to be a little bit different. But then you've got staff. And this is the real wild card here, right? So it's really hard to figure out your patients, but then you've got staff. So some staff members are newer than others and they're a little slower. Some staff members have been doing this all their life and this is no big deal and I can handle 20 patients because I've got it down. You've got some staff members that can't show up on time to save their lives. That's me. I am always late. And then you got some staff members that always have an emergency somewhere during the shift and they've got to run off to take care of something, right? And that leaves the rest of the staff in a lurch. So you've got staffing that's inconsistent, and then you have call-offs, and you have, emergencies, and it's a very, very, very messy situation. So we understand all this, right? But we have to kind of understand that healthcare is not pro-patient. They're not pro-staff. They are pro-profit. So when the federal government says, okay, 1 CNA, 6 patients, period, end of discussion, then those facilities that have to work with that ratio, they are going to, yes, it may sound great, 1 CNA for 6 patients, but they're going to have the very minimum number of staff available. And some days 6 patients might be way too much, but you will never get any more help because, hey, that statute over there says I only have to do 1 for 6. So when you have that hard number that the administrators can point back to, it takes the focus off of the needs of the patient. And that's why I'm not in favor of it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I live in this, castle in the sky and I think that all nursing home administrators or hospital administrators are in it for the welfare of the patients. I'm not that naive. I know it doesn't work like that. I think a fair amount of them are. They may be for profit, but if they don't have good patient outcomes, their profit is going to plummet. And they kind of get that correlation. So I think a lot of them are in the right place for the right reasons, but they do have to balance out this for-profit system with welfare of the patients. And I think most of them try to do a good job here. They aren't outright evil. But it's a hard line to walk. I would not want to be a facility administrator because this is super complex. It's way more complex than I'm painting the picture of. But we need to understand that as people change, as patients change, as settings change, that's going to affect the acuity, which is ultimately going to affect staffing. Does that, everybody follow me? Does that make sense? So it's really hard to say, okay, you can handle this many patients. You have to look at the patients and the staff. So let's go back to that post today. It said they wanted me to leave me alone in a building with 30 dementia residents. So let's stop there for a second. And like I said, my heart really went out to this individual, and I know no more information than what's on this screen any more than you do, right? We have to take this at face value. So we know that staffing ratios are not counting CNAs alone, right? That the staffing ratios have to take into account all nursing staff. So DONs, RNs, LPNs, CNAs. So when it says that they wanted to leave me alone in a building with 30 dementia residents, is she truly in a building alone with no help? No DON, no LPN, no RN. If they're just one building over and can be called, they're going to be counted. So is she truly in a building, truly by herself in the middle of nowhere with no help? I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm not her. I have no more information than what I have here. But it seems to me that if she's part of a facility, and there's 30 patients here, that's a facility, it seems to me that she probably had some additional help somewhere that she could have tapped into if there was a problem. But I don't know. It says that there's 5 with behavioral issues. Now, dementia can run a very wide gamut, right? Dementia can be somebody who is very pleasant, very confused, needs direction, but can do things pretty much on their own. There are dementia patients like that on dementia units. You're there to help see to their safety, make sure they eat, make sure that they stay clean and are dressed, right, redirecting. And if 25 of those patients in the dementia facility were just pleasantly confused and needed a little bit of direction and oversight for safety, yeah, one CNA can absolutely take care of that. Absolutely. Now, are these dementia patients that are in end-stage dementia fully bedbound, incontinent, have to be fed, have to be turned or repositioned every 2 hours, need all of their ADLs done for them? Well, no, one CNA cannot possibly do that for 25 people. I mean, that's just insane. Now, notice I'm keeping out those 5. We're going to get to those other 5 in a minute. So, yeah, that would not work at all. So, when we're talking about dementia, there's no one size fits all. What kind of what acuity level do these dementia patients have? That's something that isn't discussed here. It also says that 5 have behavioral issues. 5 have behavioral issues. Now, that's going to take a little bit more work. It's going to take more time. It's going to take more attention from the CNAs. And I get it. I understand. I probably wouldn't be happy with this assignment either. I got 30 people, 5 of them are behavioral. They're going to take all my time. I'm not going to have any time for the others. That could be an issue. I get it. I do. And I have no more information here. I have no way to tell you who is in the right, who is in the wrong. I don't know. I feel really bad for this person that they were put in a position where they were forced to make a very, very difficult decision and left their position. And it's bad for the patients too, because now instead of 1 CNA for 30 patients, which is a horrible staffing ratio, I would absolutely agree with you. Now you've got 0 CNAs for 30 patients, which is a way worse staffing ratio. So I get it. She was forced in a horrible position. She made the decision that she thought was right, and I fully support her on it. But there's a lot of information that's missing out of this scenario that I would have questions, right? I would definitely have some questions here, because on the surface it seems pretty bad, but if 25 of these people are pretty self-sufficient and all she's got to do really is handle the 5 behaviorals, that's not out of line. So again, your own how do I put this? Your own preconceived ideas are going to play into this as well. And when we're talking about people, there's no hard and fast rule here that we can follow. Does that make sense, guys? I hope that makes sense. It's a complex subject, but we need to understand that it's not cut and dried, that there's nowhere that says 1 CNA for 6 residents. That may be in a hospital, or that may be in a certain facility, or it may be in, certain settings, but that's not a global staffing ratio that has to be adhered to, because there's a lot of variables there. I hope that helped you guys. Let's get to your questions. Let's see who's here. Hi, Fred. Hi, Fernanda. Hi, Acuna. Hey, Jennifer. Glad you could make it. Hi, Ismathy. Hi. Hi, Blue. Blue says, encourage the patient to do as much as they can for themselves. Absolutely. It's not just good for staffing, although that's awesome, but it's also good for the patient's general well-being. Just by brushing my hair, I'm moving the muscles of my arms and my chest, and that can help prevent atrophy. It can prevent pneumonia. By feeding myself, it's going to give me a greater sense of independence. You want the patients to do as much for themselves as they can, because it helps with staffing ratios, but more important, it helps with their overall sense of well-being. So always encourage patients to do what they can. Hi, Angela. Hi, Treasure. Joey says, hi, Miss Patti. I passed my test. Oh, congratulations, Joey. All thanks to you. The videos, live classes, ebook, and weekly Q&As helped a lot. Thank you for what you do. You're indeed a blessing. Oh, thank you, Joey. I really appreciate that. And we are so, so happy for you. We are incredibly proud. And thank you for letting us be part of your journey. We really appreciate it. Hi, Carla. Blue says, CNAs aren't taught about staffing ratios and what it means. Yeah, and that's why I really wanted to cover this, because it's coming up a lot. And this screenshot that I gave you guys, that is just one group, one post in one group. This morning, there were 6 posts in 6 different groups on this topic, and it came up in my live class yesterday. So I thought, this is becoming a bigger issue, and I think somebody out there needs to be talking about it so that CNAs have a more realistic understanding of what goes into staffing ratios, and they're not just throwing out numbers without anything behind it to back it up. So you're right, Blue. Miss Patti, what you're talking about, healthcare management, is what I do for a living, and training home healthcare aides. And holy cow, healthcare management is a beast unto itself. Oh, you are so right, Blue. And like I said, I would not want to be an administrator of a long-term care facility because of all of this stuff they have to juggle. It's it's a nightmare of epic proportions. And, I feel really bad for them because they really are in a no-win situation. You're never going to make the patients completely happy because patients want one-on-one care, and that's just not feasible. You're never going to make the staff happy because you just won't. You're not going to make administration happy. You're definitely not going to make your investors happy. It's that one position where all around you, you're surrounded by enemies and nobody is happy. I would not want that job for anything. So, send your administrators some love because they have a really, really hard job. Now, and I get it, we make them out to be the enemy a lot. We do. We absolutely do. But unless we've walked a mile in their shoes, that you probably don't understand the stressors that go into that. So have a conversation. Instead of blaming them, sit down and have a conversation with your administrator. Tell them your thoughts and concerns and feelings. They may not understand that Henry needs a whole lot more care than they think he does because the nurses aren't writing good nursing notes that truly reflect the amount of care that this patient needs. So remember, they can only act on the little bit of information they have. So if you have a concern, bring it up to them. Have a conversation rather than accuse them of sabotaging you. Let's see here. Jennifer says, I don't know. I always tell the nurses that they have more responsibility than I do as a CNA. Yes, you're absolutely right, Jennifer. They do. They're not just responsible for their job, they're responsible for yours too. Because whatever you do falls under their license. So yeah, they have double the responsibility. Their responsibility for them and you. Let's see here. Yes, they have more liability. Anything that CNA does wrong comes down on them. Absolutely. Hi, Marie. This is Marie in Arizona. Great talk today. I'm struggling with just basic care of my patients daily. I have anywhere from 14 to 18, and our facility is always understaffed. Yeah, that's happening everywhere, and it's absolutely just horrible. And this is what I was talking about last week, and I'm going to say this a couple of weeks in a row, hopefully, because I think it's important that somebody says this, right? We have over 1 million CNAs in the United States right now, 1 million. And we're just shy of 1 million CNAs short, right? We're like 700,000 CNAs short. So if every single CNA that's working right now, every single one of the CNAs out there, if you found a friend, a family member, somebody that you thought would be a good CNA and you talked them into going to CNA school and getting certified and then coming to work with you, because it's always best to work with a friend, right? Tell them, oh, I got the best job in the world. We're a little short-staffed. It would be a whole lot better if we had more staff. I could then devote time to my patients, but it's a great job. You would be fantastic at it. Let me help you find a CNA school. Let's get you certified. Come to work with me. We'll be best friends and work environment, right? Work besties. And can you imagine if all 1 million CNAs did this, recruited one person, that's all you need is just one person, and got them into healthcare? Our CNA shortage would be gone in like 3 to 4 months. We have the power to be able to change this short staff situation. But instead of doing that, we go home and tell everybody how horrible our job is. We're short staffed, nobody cares, this and that. And we paint this truly dreadful picture of where we work and what we do. And nobody in the world would want to sign up for that. So if you want a better work environment, you are the one that can control that by recruiting other people into your work setting. Get them, help them find a school, refer them to your school, help them find a school, get them certified, send them to me. I don't care, right? We do live classes every Monday and Wednesday. Have them watch the live classes, but get them involved, and that will take care of that short staff situation. And then instead of having 14 to 18 patients, maybe you could get down to, 10 to 12 or 12 to 14 or something a little more manageable where you could have a little bit more time with those patients. Marie says, when is it enough? When do we call timeout? We are using a staffing agency to help, but most of the time they don't show up. Yeah. I know. Or they only have to do minimal work and they're paid twice as much too. Yeah, I know. And I am not a fan of agency. I've talked about that in a previous one. I'll bring it up again in the next couple of weeks. We'll talk again about agency, but there's a lot of drawbacks to agency. And I'm very grateful when they're there, because that's a position that wouldn't get filled at all if it wasn't for agency. So be grateful for the ones that do come in, but realize that they don't know where the washcloths are, and they don't know the patients, and they don't know what to report, so things get missed, and ultimately patient care suffers. We really need a good cohesive team that works with these patients on a regular basis to make sure that they get the care they need. So Blue says, Miss Patti, so many healthcare companies measure profits before care, and I don't think I can go back to the nursing home administration because I'd be fighting a system that puts profits first as much as they can. Yeah, I know, Blue. And we have to remember healthcare is for profit in America. And I've got opinions on that I won't get into today. I do have some opinions, but there is no perfect system. There is none. There is no perfect system. I mean, unless you want to go back like 150 years where you had the town doctor that knew you from birth to death. I mean, that was a good system, except we didn't have the medical advancements that we had. So, there was birth and death came pretty quick after that. So, you have to take the bad with the good, unfortunately, but there is no perfect system. There is none. So we have to deal with what we have and do the best we can to make as much of an impact as we can. Marie, the patients on this floor are 90% dependent on CNAs for everything. They're bed restricted. It takes about 7 hours to touch them all. Forget about self-care. I'm extremely mentally exhausted. Oh, Marie, I'm so sorry. I feel very bad for you. It's a very, very difficult position to be in. And I hope that you're getting at least some inspiration from attending our live sessions, that, somebody does care. Somebody's here to support you. Because I know that in the day-to-day work week, it's hard to remember that. When you're in the middle of it, it's hard. But we do. We absolutely appreciate everything that you do at the bedside for the patients. Marie White says, hi, Pat, love your YouTube videos. Well, thank you. Carla says, congratulations, Joey. Blue says, Marie, it might be time to find another place to work. Yeah, I was going to say that, Blue. You're absolutely right, Marie Wallace. Either that or try to recruit somebody to come in and give you a hand. If the facility isn't quite so short-staffed, maybe it would be a better work environment for you as well. Marie Wallace says, congratulations, Joey Olash. May you blossom in your new career each day. Oh, that's beautiful, Marie. Oh, gorgeous. Enjoy what you do and always remember to practice self-care. Absolutely. Blue says, I've been a nursing home administrator before I got burned out fast. Miss Patti, if a CNA knew half the responsibilities a nursing home administrator has, they wouldn't complain so much. And before anyone takes my comment the wrong way, I have much love and respect for CNAs and HCAs. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, if you go into food service, if you ask each person in each role, they'll tell you that they have the harder job than anybody there. And in reality, it takes the whole team. The server by themselves, they can take your order, but if there's no cook in the kitchen, you're not going to get food, right? If the hostess is by themselves, they can seat you, but you're not going to get anything more than a chair. So everybody has a part to play in the team. It's not that one job is any harder than the other. They all have to work together to have a good experience for the customer. Let's see here. Joey says, thanks, Carla. Thanks, Marie. Self-care, absolutely. And Marie says, hi, Blue. Thank you so much for responding. Trust me, every night I come home and tell my husband I have to quit. However, every sunrise I think about my patients and how many would go without care if I quit. Oh, Marie, that is absolutely beautiful. And thank you so much for doing what you do for your patients. I'm sure that they appreciate it, even if they can't tell you. And I know for a fact their families appreciate it. And I appreciate it, however far that goes. I hope that helps you guys. All right, so let's get to who passed this week. So, of course, we have Joey Olash that passed. And we also have J-Lo. That's So Yasmin. And Nafasa let us know that they passed the skills portion, which they were waiting on results for. So congratulations to all of you. We are super, super proud of you, and we'd love to welcome you to healthcare. So great job to all of you. Fantastic. So real quick, I know we're way late today. Oh my gosh, I kept you guys almost an hour. I'm so, so sorry. So before, hold on one second here. Who gets this one? Okay, so let me see if this works. Let's see if this works. Is this working? It's not working. Okay, hold on. I don't know which one it is. Okay, I'm trying to put a poll up here for you, but it's not showing up for whatever reason. But I had a, maybe it's this one. I had created a poll that I really want to know what day you guys would like the quiz show to be on, either Tuesday or Saturday. And for some reason, my poll is not showing up. So if you can, in the chat, just let me know whether Tuesday or Saturday would work for you. So I'm going to give you just a couple seconds. Let me know Tuesday or Saturday. Which day is best? Tuesday or Saturday? And then after we look at that, so just real quick, just type in Tuesday or Saturday. Or if you want to, put number 1 for Tuesday, number 2 for Saturday. So Tuesday or Saturday. And then I need to know what times. So morning, afternoon, or evening. So morning would be like 10 to 12. Afternoon would be like 1 to 2. Evening would be like 5 to 6. So let me know Tuesday or Saturday, morning, afternoon, or evening. Because I'm trying to set a schedule for this. And when I commit to a schedule, I mean I commit to it. I arrange my entire everything, personal, business, everything around these live obligations. So I really want to make sure that I'm picking something that can be maintained, right? So Tuesday or Saturday, morning, afternoon, or evening. Just let me know what your thoughts are. I'm going to ask you guys this again next week, and hopefully I'll have this poll up and running that we can, that we can vote with. So let me know. Marie says, yes, and we need to have recruiters at these high schools so they can go out and preach the stuff and recruit CNAs that's in high demand. Yeah, you're right, Marie. We do. Absolutely. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, so Blue, I see that you like Saturday better. I'll keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. This is going to be active for about another 3 minutes because there is a delay. So let me know in the chat what you would like, whether Tuesday or Saturday, and whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. And we're going to do this again next week. I'm going to work on this poll and see if I can get it dialed in. I'm still working on the program, still learning it. So we'll do this next week, and I'll have the poll up the entire time next week. That way we can make sure that we are getting your votes and we can time this right for you. All right, guys, it's been an hour. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to keep you guys this long, but thank you so much for hanging out with me so long. You guys are totally awesome. I love you. So I will see you next week, same time, same channel. So Thursday at 3, we're going to do our live question and answer session. And if you have a topic that you would like to hear me talk on, make sure you let me know. Send me a message on my contact form. Find me on Facebook for your CNA medical training and send me a notice there. Let me know a topic that you would like to learn more about, and I'd be happy to do a presentation on it coming up. So until next time, guys, Have a fantastic weekend and happy caregiving. Bye.